Well, dear colleagues, I suggest we should start our round table that is dedicated to practical issues for sustainable development of aquaculture in the Eurasian Economic Union. At the platform of the forum and Seafood Expo, we have been discussing for a few days the issues related to production, stimulation experts, mutual trade, and of course, all those issues are very important from the point of view of export opportunities, involvement, and cooperation between the member states of Eurasian Economic Union, and also the material resources, because a lot has been said that in the Eurasian Economic Union we have to be working on their feeding material development and also the technological development, because it does play a very important part in the overall value-added production. But today, our panel discussion will be more focused on the sustainable development of aquaculture. And for 2 days, we have been discussing issues related to various models of fish products. We are now switching to more sustainable models and systems that are more environmental ones. And we have well-respected speakers joining us at our panel, and they will share their vision and their view of those issues, how we are moving forward. And now I'd like to pass the floor to Mr. Oleg Kobikov, who is the head for the liaison office with Russia. And FAO is working quite closely with the Eurasian Economic Union. There are a few areas of cooperation also focused on the aquaculture development. And Mr. Kobikov will be talking about the support that is rendered by FAO in Europe, Central Asia. Okay, I don't need to come to the tribune. It's very good, because it is the third session in a row, and I was there held at the tribune of the fishery skills, so it was very busy for me. Thank you for your trust. And we are quite actively cooperating with the Eurasian Economic Commission. And there are certain stages of integration union when executive bodies ahead of member states, and with Armen Anatolievich we were talking about catching up with that. It used to be the same situation with the EU, and now the same applies to the Eurasian Economic Union, and we were quite lucky in that we are building our integration in spite of some mistakes made by other unions. It is not about being far ahead, but we are trying to catch up with the member states. And aquaculture is the industry that is very evolutionary, very promising one. And the development of aquaculture is quite active all around the world. And aquaculture has been intensively developing since the 1970s, and in the 1990s, the beginning of the 21st century, we have seen an exponential growth. FAO has been predicting for some years. It's not about Cassandra forecast, but it's about the real expertise of experts. In the nearest future, we will see the parity between aquaculture development production and the fish production and capture. And even then, we'll exceed it. And now the task is to preserve these figures of capture, somewhere to cut them down at some of the areas. And as for aquaculture, for the nearest decades or probably centuries, the resources will be unlimited. And the next year, 2023, we will most likely see the parity between those two segments. And aquaculture will be continuously growing. Our region, FAO, which is the region of those member states of the EEU, European countries, Central Asia, and they are in line with all the developments of aquaculture. Of course, we were a little bit behind the impetus that was seen in China and Southeast Asia, but we still have an advantage here because now we are building our experience based on what they have already done and hydrobionts, and also other promising elements. On the part of FAO, we render all our support individually to member states of the EEU and overall support to the Union as a whole. And we have a memorandum of understanding that was signed, and the plan is to cooperate very closely in the upcoming 2 years. This is the gradual development, and according to experts, it's quite a promising area, as I've mentioned before. And on the next slide, please. Thank you very much. Yes, to go back, the clicker works all right. Okay, very good picture. Very nice one. So it demonstrates the 14th SDG, the water and marine resources, overall territory, and also the human impact on some of the areas, and also the capacity of eliminating the consequences that we see here in the ocean. And here we can see some other figures about the employment. More than 200 million people and 10 million tons is the indicator for the industrial fish capture at the ships. And the end goal of any economy is to render services and to satisfy, to cover the needs, and 3 billion, more than 3 billion people are completely dependent on those resources. And of course, this presentation has been prepared especially for the Russian specificity. So Russia ranks 5th in terms of fish capture, seafood capture. And as for the consumption, we are not ranking 5. We are lagging behind, and the same applies to other member states of the Eurasian Economic Union, especially to some Central Asian countries. So we need to catch up. And in order to achieve this goal, we need to reconsider some points. It is true for Kyrgyzstan, Kazakhstan. They are actively moving towards fish and seafood promotion, so that they are included in the food ration of the population. Here we give you some information about international documents for the use of fish resources, and also the marine law convention, and also the agreement of FAO to ensure the compliance with the international measures for the preservation and management of water resources. And also in 1995, an agreement was signed to fulfill all the provisions that are related to cross-border fish reserves and the migrating fish reserves as well. So a special part is given to the agreement on poaching counteraction. And it's not about aquaculture. I just wanted to give you an overview of the documents that serve as a basis for regulation and monitoring. Here we deal with these kinds of provisions and regulations. And starting from 2010, aquaculture has been growing quite continuously, and it has made a great contribution into the fishery industry. So you had to establish a body dedicated to the control of aquaculture, and we witnessed all this process of regional organizations that were established under the auspices of FAO. Then they were renamed and mainly called commissions for aquaculture control and oversight. And here we see 6 of them. It is for our region. That is the first one, is the most relevant European Consultative Commission for Fishery and Aquaculture in internal water areas. And also we see a similar commission in the Caribbean and Latin American countries, also for European region and Central Asian region. It's the Regional Commission on Fishery in the Mediterranean, and the youngest body among those commissions, CACFISH, what is called Regional Commission for Fishery and Aquaculture in Central Asia and in the Caucasus. And I'd like to say that the first country to ratify this agreement was Armenia. And Armenia, among all the countries of the Eurasian Economic Union, it gets the largest benefits from being a member state to that. The Russian Federation, unfortunately, has not ratified it yet. However, geographically, it would be quite viable and expedient. As a Russian diplomat, I participated in the negotiation process that used to take place, and Rosrybolovstva rendered its support and supported those efforts. But at that stage, we did not do it. Hopefully, it will happen in future. We will see how it goes. So these 3 bodies for this region are the most important one: the General Commission, the Regional Commission, and the first commission that I mentioned are playing the most important part, and they lay the organizational foundation for our work. Of course, they have their own auxiliary bodies and organizations that help them do this work, like Eurasian Economic Commission has signed a memorandum of understanding and cooperation, and is taking more and more, is taking an active part in those processes. Of course, there are some transport constraints and problems related to the pandemic, but simultaneously we were still trying to develop this interaction with the member states in the formats that I have mentioned before. As I've mentioned it already at one of the sessions dedicated to educational issues, I told them about the session that we have been holding for the 35th time in 2 years. We used to have a committee on fishery. Now it has been renamed. So the last decade we've seen different proportions, but special attention has been paid not only to the industrial fishery, but also to the development of aquaculture. And the materials and the documents are available in Russian because they have been translated into that. And the most updated version has been uploaded. You can look it up because it contains a lot of interesting information, also analytical data about the state of the industry, and also what is related to hunger, counteraction, and the food security that should be ensured. And Committee on Aquaculture is contributing into that. In 2014, the 7th session was held here in St. Petersburg, and it was dedicated to those issues. And no, it's like the Football World Cup. When you choose the host country, it is given mainly to the countries where this sport is not very well developed. So the same applies to aquaculture here. And here on the margins of the fishery forum, it has been held, and it has given a very good and strong impetus for the development of aquaculture in the Russian Federation. And among these 5 countries, Russia is not in the vanguard. For example, Armenia, in terms of the growth rates and the dynamics, is far ahead of Russia. And for us, for Russian people, it serves like a very good example, and the consumption structure is quite similar, and it is, generally speaking, a common, a single market, and Armenian aquaculture is quite similar to the Russian one, and the trout and sturgeons. So this is an indicator that the attention is paid to aquaculture development in our countries, and it gives positive results. Of course, specialists know these figures and indicators, but I'm not a specialist, and it was a shock for me to learn that China has become the largest sturgeon producer in the world, and about 90% of sturgeon comes from the People's Republic of China. They have a high solvent demand, and in the Chinese industry, the salary in the industrial sector is much higher than in Russia, in the Eurasian Economic Union. But it was done thanks to the Russian genetic material. So the potential of our industry and its development were utilized by Chinese people, and thanks to their exact and accurate calculations and their labor-intensive work, they achieved that, and they actually drastically changed not only their domestic market, but also the international markets. As I've mentioned, the share of sturgeon production amounts to 90%, and I think that there is a lot we can learn from taking the China example and Global Fish, Global Business Network, that provided us with the information about capture, and now they also give us information about aquaculture development. It's about more than 50%. This is a guideline for processing companies, for transportation companies, and it is the 5th time that we have been a part of this Global Fishery Forum, and we always bring our materials and our information in Russian for the participants of the forum. And this is the first time that we have translated their publication that we had with the overview of the Chinese market, and it has been said a lot about the promising trends that we see on the Chinese market. It's a very good, promising export market for aquaculture, and this is a kind of a paradox. It's always like that. It is the larger producer. They capture most of the fish, and they consume most of the fish.
The US has opened China, so the producers of Colgate were really excited, and 1 billion of Chinese received 1 billion toothbrushes, and we know what it ended with. All the toothbrushes that are sold in the US are produced in China. Anyway, export incentives are important for our countries. Here are the publications, and the European price report, it's just fresh, issued 2 weeks ago, translated into Russian, and it is available at our website. The left document was issued late. We did not yet translate it, and it is available in English. This is integrated information on capture and the volume of the market. The subject matter in my presentation is the development of the standards for aquaculture, besides the conventions and legal instruments that are ratified by the countries. We have a number of the guidelines. They are on the behavior in business and good practices. They have been adopted by all the countries. Here is a set of the guidelines, and they are updated for the fishermen, and there are more standards turning up that are meant for the aquaculture. It is a voluntary certification of the products. It's not only certification, but marking. And there was a decision at the session of the FAO. It is on safety of the aquaculture products, and just a number of the documents that are available at the websites cover this issue. We have big plans with the Eurasian Economic Committee, and we intend to analyze the standards, the norms, and we will be developing the recommendations and guidelines for the member states. Each of the member states of the Eurasian unit, jointly and individually, will have to set up the favorable legal and economic environment, because all the member states have a high potential. There are natural resources, there is a demand, and there are undertakings, and it is also quite profitable to sell their produce at the international market. So the capacity for export is high. To conclude, the very last slide, it is very important for the FAO. I would like to note that this year has been announced the International Year of the Artisan Fishing and Aquaculture, and that's why both the AF and the aquaculture are developing in the Southeast Asia, and every shrimp that is on the table is farmed in the southeast. And in Russia, though, it is not artisan, but small scale, but still. Thanks, Anshan. Thanks.
Уважаемые коллеги, у меня просто просьба, поскольку мы начали нашу сессию немножечко.
And I have a request, since we started our session a bit late. I would like to request you to stick to the 5 minutes of your talk, and if you do not mind, I will remind you of the time. I would like to give floor to Mr. Vasily Sokolov, who is the deputy head of the Federal Agency for Fisheries, Rosrybolovstvo. The Commission is cooperating with the Rosrybolovstvo. There is a number of the joint initiatives, and the sustainable development of the aquaculture was the initiative of Rosrybolovstvo. However, it's not the only area, and Vasily will present the presentation on the potential of the aquaculture for the export. Thank you. We had a plenary session today that was on aquaculture. Indeed, it's high on the agenda. We understand it's the future for producing protein. It's a priority for us. And talking about the development of the aquaculture and giving the statistics, we try to not to include China, because they are the leaders. Their bar is high, and the other countries are somewhere far below. The data that we have is slightly different from what the FAO have. And according to the data that we have, culture is ahead of capture. You can see here are the figures in China, and they are trying to make their produce environmentally healthy, and the growth rate is lower, but they pay more attention to what is being produced in the aquaculture industry. Here is the standard picture that we see recently, and by 2030 the culture will be faring much better than capture. That's what's happening in this country. The figures are quite impressive. In the Union, Eurasian Union, our country, this country, achieved a good progress, but the other member states also display good growth figures. And I had a discussion with our colleagues from Uzbekistan, and I was surprised to know that 600,000 tons, they will be farming 600,000 tons. I'm eager to go to Uzbekistan to see what they're doing over there. So there is quite a small dynamics, and in seeding materials, the situation has changed this year considerably. Business focused on the seeding to be produced in the locations of where it is being used, and there are new hatcheries for baby fish, and hopefully impregnated roe facilities will also be constructed, and the growth is due to the commercial growth, and we see the growth, quite a high growth of the salmon species. There is a market for it. There are proven technologies, and the demand is high. Regarding the other species, the growth is not that high. And carp species, it is at a plateau stage. The seafoods are growing because there are vast water areas of the coastal ocean, sea areas. Enterprises, companies break down. The structure has not changed. that much, but we expect that within 2-3 years the situation will be different, and the share of the large farms will be growing, and the amount produced by large farms will be more. Now, mostly it is SME, mostly it is the small and micro businesses. A lot of ponds are used, and there are not that many industrialized production facilities. This affects on the products, on the species. Salmons, yes, quite a high growth, but in the next 5 years, we expect that the share of salmon will be at the same level, or it might even be 1.5 times more than the other species. That's the forecast that we have made. By 2030, we expect that 250,000 tons will be the salmon products industrialized. And we expect the similar picture will be in the other countries of the Eurasian Economic Union, because businesses are focusing on that. So what's so good about the aquaculture? The good thing that it can produce products at the concentration of the population, and the logistics expenses for capture when the catch is in the Far East and the consumers are in the European part of Russia is not typical for the aquaculture. Interaction of the countries within the Union will provide a synergy effect. It refers to both the feeds and the seeding. It is difficult to do the import substitution in one country. International cooperation is helpful in this respect. Through joint efforts of the member states of the Eurasian Economic Union, we'll have an infrastructure at full, which will supply the population with the high-quality fish products. Thank you, Vasily. Of course, we can supply food products, but there are many opportunities now, and we have discussed some of the opportunities, and there are many tools. One is the academic mobility, the possibility to use the educational programs that do exist at the space of the Eurasian Union for both the students and the lecturers to use something unique that the countries have. We are developing a project for growing seeds, and after that we will launch an aquaculture project. And another area of cooperation, I think it's quite lucrative, it is financing the integration projects. We are open. You know, you are open, and we will be cooperating in this respect. Thank you for your talk. I would like to give floor to Mr. Sergei Mitin, Senior Vice Chairman, Federation Council Committee on Agriculture and Food Policy and Environmental Management. We have been working with Sergei for more than 1 year. He is a great professional in the agriculture and in the other areas, drinking water, for example. And it's good that you are cooperating with us and also share your experience at such happenings as this one. Thank you, Armen, and Oleg has mentioned the 17 goals of the Sustainable development, and goal 6 is ours. We do have quite a number of the issues. And it is related to aquaculture as well, because it needs such a component as clean water. And it's good that we started our session with referring to the Sustainable Development Goals, because these are global issues. And I would like to quote both Oleg and Vasily. And we, in this Russia, out of 5 million tons, have 350,000 tons for aquaculture. It is less than 5%. And the growth rates are different, and me, as a legislator, I can tell what issues are being discussed and addressed at the legislative level. There is quite a number of the documents. There is federal law on veterinary control, on husbandry. Then there is a law on the development of the agriculture, state support of insurance in the agriculture. There are decrees of the government, the state program on the development of the agriculture and regulating markets. There is a special law on aquaculture. Let me refer to the laws on organic produce, and we have just enacted this particular law, and there is a standard. It is a decree dated 8th of September. It is the strategy of the development of agricultural and the fishery industry for the period till 2030. It is an updated document, and it is for the first time that it covered both the agro-industrial complex and the fishery industry, because the development of the fishery industry showed that when state support is given, then it spurs up the development. If the share of the aquaculture is growing fastly, then, of course, and if it is a global trend, then in our parliamentary activity, with your help, we will have to focus. By 2030, Vasily has referred that the salmon production will be, salmon farming will be growing, and I can say that if the figure is 800,000 tons for all the fishery industry, then it is twice as much as a couple of years before. Vasily has mentioned what species receive the priority. We have 2,700 plus that are engaged in farming live fish, more than 3,000 farms that produce the resources and the high-value products. And Vasily mentioned which species. There are 550,000 hectares of the water table. Russia can produce more. And we had a meeting with your head for the northwest area. Novgorod region has a high capacity to increase the production. So, what are the state support measures that we have? The state program for the development of the fishery industry has been approved. So it includes the subsidies for the purchasing of the feeds and seeding materials, acquisition of equipment, transportation means, vehicles for farming, benefits and subsidies, incentives. So is that much state help or not? So that's what we will have to find out. Looking into the goals that were set so that we shouldn't lag behind China, then we think that we should use the available state support measures and might even invent some new ones. That depends on how we will be cooperating.
Also today, I know that the Eurasian Economic Commission introduced the technical regulation that will be enacted starting from the 21st of March 2023, and there are about 90 remarks of the producers of veterinary material, and I'm the head of the Veterinary Control Group in the Federation Council. And almost all the producers and manufacturers have voiced their negative attitude towards this document, and March will come soon, and we have seen such examples that are not quite good, like technical regulation number 21. You know this situation when it sets such a level that is not possible to be achieved, and we have not been able to resolve this issue for several years. So I'd like us to take that into consideration. We need to work on that with Eurasian on the platform of the Federation Council, the Ministry of Agriculture. And we need to thoroughly study and elaborate those documents. And 21, 40, they are working, but still there are some problems and issues related to veterinary control, as I have mentioned before. And even now, we see very strict requirements for aquaculture production, and it has to be taken into consideration, like the chrome requirements, and it was something that actually surprised us about the content in this water, so it has to be excluded somehow. But how that can be done, we have to work on that. Now, we have a problem in the Russian Federation. We have a lot of water areas that are interested to be developing aquaculture, but there are problems with the seeding material, with technology, with equipment, but we are ready to work on that, and we need to join efforts. And I hope that this conference will also serve as a possibility for us to strengthen this cooperation and to work on that further on, because we need to resolve that, and we need to be quite circumspect in terms of elaborating technical regulations. Thank you very much for your attention. Thank you, Sergey. Yes, you were quite right in saying that today this forum and this conference, on the one hand, demonstrates positive dynamics in our union in terms of the production and fish consumption, and we see that illustrated and reflected in aquaculture. However, we are facing a lot of problems, and the majority of these problems are related to the technologies and the material base, and we are quite dependent on technological solutions. And I think that it is an excellent opportunity for us, using our integration tools in our union, to use those opportunities, financial resources, the high-quality specialists, to build our own this material support, where we will pay special attention to innovative solutions. So hopefully we will be able to achieve that, joining the efforts. There is a potential to be unlocked, but it needs to be stimulated, and we have noted that almost all the member states of the EU, the governments, are allocating quite substantial funds, and they're not only financial funds. And hopefully next year, when we gather together at this forum, we will have made progress by this time. Sergey, thank you. In your speech, you have mentioned the problems related to technical regulation, and as a Commission, we are ready, and not our department, but the department that is related to it, we can build, we can structure and construct the dialogue in an efficient form, but also you emphasize the importance of organics, and it is almost a final stage of the project, and our Commission is elaborating those documents, and we have almost finalized this work. And Elena Alexandrovna is today with us, the director of Roskачество, and she will be talking about organic aquaculture and what are the opportunities, what is the potential. I'd like to emphasize that we have very good relations with Roskачество, and they are paying special attention to the quality of the products. And we talked a lot about the production, about the final products. Could you please share your opinion with us? Vasily Igorovich, could you please pass a clicker to me? Okay, thank you. So, the presentation. Okay, here we go. So I will start with the organic aquaculture. Nowadays, if we talk about the share of organic aquaculture in the overall volume, the share is not quite high. However, I'd like to draw your attention to the top 3 countries. Sweden, they pay attention to fish. France is moving towards this as well. And talking about organic aquaculture in Russia, if I was asked about that yesterday, I would say that we do not have it. But now we already have producers who have not already obtained certificates, but they will get it quite soon. And we have this producer with us today, and 127 producers. This is the figure that we have on the market, and it has been achieved for the past 2 years. And I'd like to extend my gratitude to the Federation Council. The parliamentary control played an important part in the process, and this is a good figure, taking into consideration that these 2 years were a complicated one due to the COVID, and now we are facing difficult economic situation. Export is closed for us. However, out of 9 subjects, almost 42 substituent entities of the Russian Federation, almost half of the territory. So we are expanding this product line, and organic aquaculture production is being certified. We only started this process with only 1 producer, but overall we have 127 of them. And the man also knows another figure. I did not include that into the slide, but all EU member states talking about national certification. So overall, they give us smaller number of producers certified by national bodies. So Russia is a leader thanks to the support given by the Ministry of Agriculture. They are promoting that. And we also would like to thank the European the Eurasian Economic Union. So Russia is helping there a lot. Of course, we are waiting, we're looking forward to having a single common market, because the conditions for global trades are already here, because in each state we have their own laws. In Armenia, in Kazakhstan, they approved it even before Russia did, and talking about the trade, we need to go through the process of the new certification, but we have the same customs borders, and it is not logical. And another advantage, this is the merit of the department, we are moving quite fast in accordance with the roadmap that was elaborated, and we hope that in 2 years, it's a very short timeline for an international document, and my colleague has given us an example of the technical regulation. Of course, it takes time, all this legislative procedure. So what else are we doing nationally and interstate certification? Another merit of our colleagues, they supported the Russian model of regulation. Here it is. So this model implies that the standards that are adopted, interstate standards, will lay the foundation for the regulation of the organic aquaculture, because standards are adopted faster. On average, it takes about 9 months. Of course, it is faster than reconsider and review the agreement, and it was actively supported by the Commission, and interstate committee was established, and representatives of various member states is already functioning, is already working. So we listen to the experience of each member state at the previous meetings. We discussed the needs, the requirements, the standards that are the priority ones for us, and that should be the first ones to be adopted. And that is what is helping us to approximate us, to bring us closer to other countries, and standards are this way the method for harmonization, and we do not have a single standard for aquaculture. These requirements are included into the general standards, but we can move towards this goal as well. Talking about certification, now we have this country principle. If you are trading in Russia, you need to have the Russian certificate. But in the nearest future, we hope we will have the recognition of the certification, taking in consideration the situation that we are facing right now. We are holding negotiations with the People's Republic of China, and in October in Saudi agriculture will be represented there. Armen Anatolievich will be the member of our delegation, and it will be for the first time that we will be presenting organic aquaculture during this expo, and then we will be discussing their prospects for recognition, because we have already exporters interested in entering the market. What Sergei Gerasimovich mentioned, we have 2 countries, Kazakhstan and Armenia. Bio and organics are synonyms, and we in Russia have only labeling, allowed only organic labeling, and these are the examples that we see currently on the shelves. And my colleagues removed those labels from the shelves, because we are trying to find train washing in some stores, and we have reported about 200 places, and we need to find out whether indeed we have problems with these products and the quality is really low. So this is the national mark. It's quite a young legislation. Armen mentioned that, digitalization, digital products, and it has been incorporated into the federal law. So besides having this QR code, and it is an open register, it is an unprecedented measure. In the EU, they do not have an open register, and any consumer can upload, can scan this QR code. They can actually view whether the product is included into the stock list. And each producer, if it is certified, they are held responsible for their products. So what about the results? Here, this Russian labeling is a leader if we compare that with the international brands. Of course, we have problems with trust, but it is quite understandable because of the complicated situation that we are facing. And now, all of you present here today are taking part in that. Amen Anatolievich, I'd like to congratulate you on adopting general guidelines for aquaculture development. It happened back this summer. And I'd like to conclude my speech with expressing the hope that they will be officially adopted quite soon. Thank you very much. Thank you, Yelena Alexandrovna, for very detailed and interesting presentation. Just briefly, I'd like to say that our work with the colleagues from Roskачество is quite good, and they have demonstrated very high professionalism. And thank you very much for rendering us all this support. Dear colleagues, I'd like to pass the floor to Natalia Sonic, the head of the main department of animal husbandry intensification from the Republic of Belarus, and the speech will be dedicated to the development of fishery and aquaculture in the Republic of Belarus. Please, the floor is yours. Can I have a clicker, please? Yes, thank you. Thank you. Okay, now it works. So I will tell you about the structure of our aquaculture, and we see here that almost 80% is carp, and we see that only 5% are the valuable species of fish. By 2025, we have to decrease the share of carp and increase the valuable species of fish. The next slide, please. Over the last 2 years, the volumes are quite small compared to Russia, but nevertheless, we've produced more than 14,000 tons, and as for the valuable species of fish, about 450,000. And we expect to increase this number to 700,000 tons by 2025. So as for the support that is rendered by the government, we have the state support for the agricultural business, the development of fishery sector. We are subsidizing the prices for combined feed. The compensation is about 30%. The facilitation of the veterinary procedures, and probably you already know that the main fishery organizations were established even before the Great Patriotic War. So we need these veterinary procedures to take place, the melioration that is planned to be carried out this year and next year. We have already planned that. And also we have the 4th program for animal husbandry. And also we will allocate some land plots for fishery. And as for specialist training, we have 2 universities, that a university and an academy that are training the simulators that are used for the experiments to be carried out in vivo for aquaculture. Also, the biological cleaning of water, the practical laboratory for RAS systems. So the students are trained there. The seeding conditions, and this is the internship that the students go through in those facilities for various species of fish. So all this work is practical, and I wouldn't like to boast, but I'd like to say that we cover our own need by our combined feed plants. Overall, we have 4 plants. We have about 110,000 tons, the largest ones. It's Novy. This one has the capacity of 68,000 tons combined feed for fish, and Zhabrinsky and Kamrunsky combined feed plant with the two lines, and we are actively exporting those combined feed to various countries. Now we are exporting a lot to the Russian Federation. What else would I like to say? We are at the transitional stage. We are identifying fish, and we need to complete this work by the middle of next year. So we will have to identify those types of fish. It is not only about fish, but about also some other animals.
There were questions asked on how we are going to identify the commercial fishery. Will be identified through plaques, and there will be a tag saying what the name of the pond, the name of the species, what veterinary measures have been taken so as to be able to track the movement and the custody of chain of custody. And we will also see to track the baby fish and which lakes and it will go. That's about it. Thanks, Natalia. Very interesting to come to know the experience of Belarus, and we have a proposal. Since you have an education center in Belarus, and Maria is responsible for economic mobility, and we can include your center into the program of economic mobility for the students from other countries to be able to visit your center. But of course, you're welcomed. Thank you. And so the importance of the conferences and that kind is for us to find new areas for cooperation. Here is one of the areas. And thanks, Natalia. Since you have started talking about feed, I suggest that we listen to the next speaker, Mr. Linchik. He is the Quality Control Department, and he will be talking about the enterprise that is engaged in the production of the combined feed.
Помню про регламент. Добрый день, уважаемые коллеги.
Yes, I'm aware of the time limit, and so I will give you the bullet points of our activity. Many words were spoken about the development of agriculture. By 2030, we expect to see 600 tons of fish, and it's a lot of feed as well. And so at the moment, Russia does not have that much. That's why we in Belarus, we can provide a helping hand in this respect. Many could have heard the talk of Federal Agency Minister, Mr. Patrushev, on the construction of the feed plants, but it's a long-term program. The first plants will be commissioned in 2025. What should be done before this deadline? Aquaculture needs feed every day. So what is BMBK company? It is the complex. It is a system. It is for combined feed, pre-mix feed, and we are the only company of the former Soviet Republic that can provide the replacement for the amino
Больше
acids.
всего всех интересует первая цифра, это корма для ценных пород рыб.
Of course, everyone is interested in the feed for the high-value fish. We produce 8,000 tons. The major customer is Russia. We supplied more than 6,000 tons for trout and salmon to Russia this month. The feed for the other animals are produced as well. You might not be interested in the husbandry, but we produce premixes, and that's what Russian Federation is planning to build. But they can make use of the premixes produced in Belarusia. And amino acids, we produce 33,000 tons of lysine monohydrochloride, then lysine sulfate, 32,000 tons,
Ну и в рыбные корма
tryptophan, 1.6
также как
thousand
свои,
tons.
так и предлагаем в дальнейшем использовать наш пшеничный глютен.
So we also can produce and we offer it for sales.
По всем возможным и невозможным
Our products are certified GMP plus.
национальной белорусской
It is
так и в международной.
the
ФССИ
ISO 9001, and
2% по протеину.
gluten has 82% of protein. We received all the necessary clearances and certificates to sell the feed in the Russian Federation. Presentation is quite lengthy, so I would like to skip some of the slides, but let me say a few words about the resources. So indeed, it's a big issue, and we have our 40% of our own resources. However, we are short of fish meal and fish fat, and it's a global problem. I will be willing to address this issue with the help of the colleagues who are present over here. And there's a very good market for fish meal and fish fat. So we are doing one common thing. Great, we are developing the aquaculture, but sometimes we cannot produce if we do not have the input feedstock.
Спасибо, коллеги.
Thank you, colleagues.
Спасибо. Кратко и в точку.
Thank you. It was brief but to the point. And I think this forum is a good site to identify the partners. So we understand now, we know now that fish meal and oil and fish fat is high in demand. So buying equipment is one thing, but of course the input feedstock is also needed, and we hope this forum will help you to find the potential partners as the suppliers of the feedstock that you have mentioned. Dear colleagues, we have been talking about genetics. There was quite an interesting presentation at the previous session, and the cooperation with the Republic of Belarus on the exchange of the genetic material is the topic of our next presentation. I would like to give floor to Mr. Alexei Mishkin. Thank you. Thanks for the possibility, for the opportunity to have my talk over here. Will somebody pass me over the clicker?
А можно презентацию, пожалуйста?
Presentation,
Я вот сегодня,
please.
наверное, поступлю нестандартно. Но с
So,
моей точки зрения, мы
I
немножко
will not
упомянули карповые
act
виды рыб.
standardly,
И есть несколько причин,
and
почему я сегодня
I
хочу об
think
этом рассказать. Первая причина — это
we
все-таки
do not
достаточно
talk quite a lot
устойчивые
about
показатели.
carp,
Мы уже
fish,
почти
and
десятилетие видим, как
That's what I am going to talk
150
about.
тысяч тонн в России.
Stable indicators. We receive 150,000 tons
Вторая причина
of
это
carp
мы
species in
сегодня
Russia.
видели на предыдущей
Another
встрече,
reason
что
why I would
Казахстан,
like to
например,
talk
собирается в 40
about
раз увеличить
carp,
продукцию
we
культуры.
see, for
Также
example, that Kazakhstan
другие
would like
азиатские соседние
to
страны, такие как, например,
increase the
Узбекистан,
production
мы об этом говорим.
by a
И
factor
последние
of
несколько лет
50.
мы
Uzbekistan is
сталкиваемся с
also
валом звонков
is
с
quite
просьбой
ambitious. And
как-то
besides, we
получить
receive a
какой-то
lot of
генетический
phone
материал от
calls
нашего селекционного
for
центра.
genetic
То
material
есть
from our
после
selection
развала
center.
Советского Союза наши
After the
республики
collapse of the
оказались
Soviet
федерацией,
Union,
и каждый развивался в
our
своем соку.
republics were
Это привело
isolated
к
from one
депрессии
another,
математичных
and
статей,
that resulted
и мы одни из
in
немногих, кто
the
все
hybrid
время
depression
поддерживал
of the herds, and we are one of the few that have been supporting. And I would like to show how we can exchange genetic material and how we can increase the productivity in the water areas and without expenses. And so the different type of species of the carp were provided from Belarus. We have received the samples as native sperm, and we have frozen them, and those samples would be used for cross-breeding. So what can we offer? And
имеем 9 селекционных достижений, то
we
есть
have 9 achievements, and we act as a hatchery and as a nursery, and let me tell you what we can give, what advantages we do have. The species presented on the screen are one of the best species, and they were farmed for specifically for cross-feeding. And we know that genetics and diseases and feeds are quite a problem. These two species have certain genetic features. They are very resistant to the diseases that affect the carps. And using these species for crossbreeding, we can see that this gene of resistivity is inherited, so the cross with this species will provide an immunity to the main diseases that affect carp. KM1, it is an
большинство
carp,
пород, которые мы сейчас используем,
most of the
были селекционированы от европейского
species were selected from the European species, and infusion of the blood of KM1 provides the stable effects of heterosis and high resistivity to unfavorable factors. These species are used for crossing as well. Butterfly carp, quite an interesting species. It is meant for warm climate, for industrialized warm water grounds. The blood of the southern species was used, and it has 44% of the carp from Germany. And there is a certain percentage of the Japanese carp, and that's why the name is butterfly. It has a certain geo-marker on the back. Surface carp, it was found as a cross breeding of carp.
Основное направление — это использование его, например, в заморных водоемах, где не может жить карп. То есть мы можем, он переносит
is resistance to lack of oxygen. One can receive sterile triploids, and it could be released to different lakes, and it is growing quite well. Two more types of carp. The ideal combination for the cross breeding, and it gives good indicators. And, these are the novelties for our selections, those that have known it. There is a gene of mortality that does not give the high output. However, as a result of the long selection work, the line of the carp that is at the top do not have an active gene of mortality, and this species is good for both the south and moderate climate, and there is no need to remove the scale. It is scaleless. Here is a short table, and 50 years of the selection scientists are pressed into it. We can provide the practical recommendations of cross-breeding different species. Thanks to the possibility to do the crossbreeding, we can achieve an increase of productivity without additional expenses. Thanks to many years of working with the carp, it is the most protected species. We do not depend from the international suppliers, and we provide all the necessary materials for carp breeding, carp farming. Yesterday, the Belarusian side informed me that 75% of all the commercial carp is grown as a result of cross-breeding. It indicates how good the carp culture is, and many farms switch over to cross-breeding and the farming crosses. And I would like to suggest to the other farms to adopt that kind of approach. Initially, the development of the species takes place in the ponds, and then it is necessary to invest into the equipment, high technology, and the further development will be complemented by the high value species. And our colleagues are now are starting to develop it, and I think they should place greater emphasis on selections. And I've just memorized one phrase from your presentations. You said, "We don't have any problems at all." And it's great to hear that kind of statement when there is a lot of uncertainty, and it's a pleasure to hear that there are the companies that are moving ahead, that are self-reliant, and they are also interested to share their technologies, the technologies that they have mastered, to the other stakeholders. And that's what is happening about, and I hope that the other countries, the other stakeholders, will make use of your achievements. Dear colleagues, we will be switching from genetics and innovations to the last but not the least presentation, it's all about technologies. We say that there are science, educations. These are important components, but there are state-of-the-art digital technologies that transform all the industries. And we have Mr. Ivan Pekshev. He is Director General, and he will share his presentation about the digital technologies, big data, AI, etc.
Dear colleagues, good afternoon, everyone. So I'd like to start with the same words we finished with. We do not have problems. We will make it so that with us you will not have any problems. So my name is Ivan Pekshev. I'm a visionary industrial entrepreneur, and we are helping the state to build the cloud platform. And two products are presented in G8 mobile application for amateur fishermen that allows you to find the places where you can fish, and also some other information. And later on, I will show you a QR code to download it. And today, I'd like to tell you about the digital platform that we have developed. What has been mentioned by Ilya Vasilievich and Vasily Igorovich, and in the framework of the general session, the plenary session, we need to develop the field-oriented technologies, and we will not be able to be successful without that. So I will share with you my vision, our vision. So I will not go deep into detail. This is the quote provided by Rosrybolovstvo. We are facing global trends and challenges, and aquaculture is becoming something even bigger than just additional production. So we need to support the interaction between all these stakeholders to successfully face and resolve the existing challenges. Of course, we face such problems as the lack of seeding materials, and we need a unified, a single ecosystem, the three pillars, and the triangle is the most sustainable system, as you know. And one of the areas is the digital platform. And it is an indispensable part of our life, like we use, for example, mobile applications to order food, to take a taxi, and in aquaculture, in fishery sector, we need the same. We need to track certain things. We need to control elements. We have more than 320 enterprises. We need to understand the needs of the market, and the business should understand the transparency of the competition, and they should monitor some other indicators. So we hope that this field-oriented digital platform will help us to resolve all those issues. So the key thing is to cut down the costs if we have this unified system, and it gives additional opportunities for interaction because some hurdles are removed and eliminated, and it facilitates also getting loans and credits from the banks, and it makes transactions safer, and it helps us to control the storage warehouse facilities, and we use a lot of various state systems that will be further on integrated. This is our plan, to have a standardized goods that will satisfy the needs of the customers. Yes, to go back. And of course, the advantage is understanding the problems that we see during the launch of the platform, the market does not understand the remainders at the storage facilities, and this digital transformation, the unified catalogs, they help us understand which products were still lacking, what will be the logistical costs, what control processes are necessary and needed for this purpose. And on this single platform, we can have this high-quality information. And this is like a one-stop shop for aquaculture developer. You can enter the data, the feeding format. Some data is entered into the system automatically, and then the data is transferred into Mercury or any other type of system. Then the data is also sent to laboratory and to other stakeholders as well. One of the procedures in terms of tracking the process and making transactions safe, so we track it at each point to ensure the high quality. The most important slide, it seems like this. So in ecosystem, we see a large layer of state information systems that we need to integrate it in order to transfer data, in order to have the smooth oversight activity. And we will not need to check the data additionally. So we need a reporting module entered into the system that will help us to control our interaction with the vendors, and it will be a single system that will help us to control what is happening on the market and also the interaction on various types of marketplaces. And this platform will serve as a unified basis, and it will be a very good tool that will help the Ministry of Agriculture to understand what is happening on the market. And as of today, our modest results, taking into consideration that we started working on the project long ago, and in summer we received our first results, developments, our interaction with the first combined feed producers, and you can actually already place some orders, and we are developing this area, and we are moving towards expanding that. It will be about the requests for the sale of fish products. So it's not only about the combined feed, and we need the material support, and we hope to have close cooperation with other countries as well, dear colleagues. And the main QR code that we need, you need to download the application and have a look at our excellent website. These are my contacts. Thank you for your attention. It's a wonderful platform. Thank you. Have a nice day. Ivan Sergeyevich, thank you very much for this interesting presentation of the platform. We think that such digital solutions have huge potential to be applied in all the sectors of agriculture. Dear colleagues, unfortunately, our session is coming to an end, and after the session on the margins of the forum, we can work together and we will draw some conclusions. Unfortunately, we do not have time to ask questions because the delay is already 3 minutes. But overall, I'd like to say that during our panel session and roundtable, we have touched upon a wide range of issues: education, selection, digitalization, regulation, sustainable productions, issues related to organic aquaculture, and many other issues. I wouldn't like to repeat what our speakers have expressed. Thanks everyone for participating in our roundtable.